Hi, and welcome to another Red Dot Forum Camera Talk. As always, I'm David Farkas. I'm joined by Josh Lehrer.
Hey, everybody.
Of course, we've got Jose Rivera producing the show.
Hello, guys.
And we are back with another exciting episode. What are we talking about today, Josh?
Well, it's more like, what are we not? No, well.
Well, wait.
Today's episode, whose title has changed about 500 times, is essentially a list or a thought process of things not to do. Whether that's not to do with your camera or more technique-oriented, sort of an aggregation of a lot of the things that either David and I have done and learned from, or that we've seen other people do and said, like, hey, like, maybe there's a different way. So
yeah, you know, it's like this, you know, one of the sayings I've always liked, and I have no idea who to attribute it to, so we're just going to say a saying that I've heard, which is a smart person learns from their mistakes. A wise person learns from the mistakes of others. So what we're hoping to do is educate you guys to our mistakes, things that we've done and learned from, and also have seen other people do, and we've learned from that, and we're gonna pass along that knowledge as well. So the idea is you don't have to learn from your own mistakes to know that it's a mistake.
Yes.
So we're gonna run through not the do's, but the don'ts of Leica photography.
And I would say, as we're going, obviously, if there are things that maybe you have done and learned from, or learned at a workshop or from someone else, and you think you want to throw it in there, please do.
Yeah.
Because this is obviously an open discussion, and we love to hear you guys' feedback. So, when was our last show? It's like,
It was a while ago.
Yeah. I don't know when our next show is either, but you know, like,
hey, we're just here.
We're just here.
We're in the moment.
I know, we're loving it. But we're having a good time, so it's okay. So this episode is not necessarily a question and answer show.
Yeah.
It's more of a statement and explain show. But obviously, we still welcome your questions like we always do.
And in fact, I'm very curious to see when we go over some of these, what the comments are going to be, because this one, I think it's going to be fun. You know, this is definitely, let's say, call this a little more lighthearted.
Well, whenever we make like definitive statements about something, we tend to always get yelled at. So
yeah,
this is going to be one of those, like the Fact or Fiction show we did.
Listen, I'm here for it.
That's right. Let's do it. Let's bring it on. I guess we could just jump right into it. I don't know if we have any housekeeping.
We do have some housekeeping.
Do you want to talk about what's happening out west now, or you want to wait till not like middle of the show?
I think we should talk about it now.
We can mention it again afterward too.
Yeah.
So David has exciting news.
I have exciting news.
Tell us.
As we have talked about in prior episodes, we are supporters of the LHSA, the International Leica Society. We may or may not have a logo to put up here, but if we don't, it's okay.
It's too complicated.
But LHSA.org, you can check them out online. And it's been around for over 50 years. I've been a member since 2006, and I've gone to a lot of the meetings. There's usually an annual meeting in the fall and a spring shoot in the spring. And Josh and I, and Jose, and Kirsten, who a lot of you know from the chat, will be at the spring shoot in Colorado Springs in May. And we are going to be doing a live, exclusive show from the spring shoot, except it's not going to be on YouTube. It's not even going to be filmed. We are doing it this old-fashioned way, where we sit in front of a group of people and talk.
So
and they talk to us.
This will be our first episode with a live audience.
Yes, a live, not studio audience.
And it is Friday, May 13th at 8 p.m. if you can go. As David said, this is not going to be recorded or streamed. This is an exclusive episode, if you will, solely for members of the LHSA who are attending the spring shoot in Colorado Springs.
Yes.
You want to pull up the, so there's really 2 steps involved. If you are a member of the LHSA, all you need to do is sign up and be there. If you're not a member of the LHSA, sign up for the LHSA and sign up for the spring shoot, because there's a lot of really cool events happening. David's going to take you through how to at least find the, here we go.
Here we go. Let's, you know, want to see my ugly desktop here. Okay. So that is the, as you can see, Colorado Springs, spring shoot, and you can just click to register, and it'll go through here, the registration fees.
Yeah, pull up the program. It's right there.
And the program is right here.
So we've got Leica on loan, so you've got gear you can test.
Let me make this a little bigger so you guys can see it online.
We've got a couple of different photo-related outings and some lectures, a photo excursion, and then there it is.
Who's these guys?
Those guys, and also Jose and Kirsten will be there. And to see the most important part, I'm pointing like you can see. Wait, there it is.
Oh, well, Jose can go to you.
Well, the open bar.
There you go. Oh, yeah.
The open bar. So if you ever wanted to both see us in person while intoxicated, now is your chance. Because we are covering that. So definitely, if you want to meet David and myself and Jose and Kirsten and hang out with us and see us rambling on in person. Unfortunately, the dog will not be there. I wish. Friday, May 13th at 8 p.m. in Colorado Springs at the LHSA Spring Shoot. We hope to see you there. If we don't see you there, well, maybe next time.
All right.
Cool.
Yay.
And we'll mention this again later on to remind everyone, because this is exciting for us to kind of bring our show on the road.
Bring the virtual to reality.
That's right.
Yeah.
Wait.
And what's the subject we're going to talk about?
The subject is, well, I forget the exact title, but it's essentially the intersection of modern and vintage in the world of Leica. So how the extensive back catalog in the world of Leica meshes with their super high-tech current product portfolio in terms of how it pays tribute, how it works together, all that stuff. So it's going to be really cool. We're going to have a lot of really interesting pieces to show and talk about. And honestly, we're both super, super excited. We're all flying in for it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
It is. It is. And yeah, so hopefully we see some of you there, and you guys can discover what a cool organization LHSA is and get involved. Because listen, we got our Leica nerds have to stick together somehow, right?
Yeah, it's a great organization. They do a lot of good work, a lot of philanthropic work as well, and you get, I even think you get discounts on repairs from Leica as well. I mean, there's tons of benefits. Viewfinder magazine, which
Kirsten does.
Our colleague Kirsten puts together, is a spectacular publication. So we'll mention it again later, and we'll send out some emails about it and stuff, but just heads up next month.
Heads up. Here we go. All right.
Let's get into it.
I think that's it for general housekeeping. We'll make an announcement later, but all righty. So where do we start? There's so many things.
So we'll start at the top. Jose, why don't you start?
There's so many things not to do.
What is the first thing that we shouldn't do?
Okay, I think this one is David's favorite.
Okay.
It is.
Don't shoot past f8 or f11.
Depending on the camera, of course.
Expand on that for us, David.
So, you know, I always like to say friends don't let friends shoot at f16. And here's the thing. A lot of people believe that if you stop down the lens further, you're just going to increase depth of field and you get more sharpness everywhere. And the sky's the limit. And why would they put f22 on a lens if they didn't want you to use it? Well, I think they do it to trick you. It's a cruel, cruel joke. In the film era, it wasn't as big of a deal if you would stop down. I mean, I used to go on shoots where we'd bring big lights and you want to get these tiny little, starbursts and block out the light, and you're shooting at f22, f32. If you ever shot on a view camera, f64, 128. So why am I saying don't go past f8 or f11?
And I'm just going to interrupt for a second. We're talking about shooting 35 millimeter full frame.
Yes.
Not medium format, not large format.
Yes, we're talking about full frame digital. And the reason for that is something called diffraction. Diffraction happens when, for various physics things, the circle of confusion exceeds the pixel size. As we stop down too small, what happens is the light actually starts blurring over more than one pixel, and that can cause softness. So you're getting the opposite of sharpness, even though it appears at a glance you're getting more depth of field. And that's going to depend not on the lens, but on the camera that you're using it on. So as the pixels get smaller, you can't stop down as much, or shouldn't, I should say, not to do, right? So if you're shooting on a 24 megapixel M body, let's say, that you got an M10 or an M10P or an M246 or an M240, etc., you can safely shoot at f11, maybe even f13. You can get away with that because those are 6 micron pixel size. As we go all the way up the range to SL2 at 47, or the Q2 at 47 as well, or the brand new M11, that's 60 megapixels, now we're down in the 4 micron range or smaller, and really you should only be shooting at f8, maybe even like 7.1 for maximum sharpness. A lot of people gave Leica grief through the years, why are they staying at 24 megapixel, or why on the S camera every single generation was 37.5 megapixel when everyone else had, 80 and 100 megapixel. The reason was simple. They wanted to give the opportunity to shoot at whatever aperture the photographer wanted. We've gotten to a point, though, that the demands of the market outweighed the practicality of being able to shoot at smaller apertures. So now we just have to be aware of it and not shoot at 11 or 16 or 22.
And it's not a cliff. It's a gradual degradation of image quality as you stop down. So it's always a balancing act. If your creative objective requires f11 or f13, a slight decrease in imaging performance may be what you need to deal with.
Maybe warrant.
It just happens. It's similar to ISO.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have to go to excessively high ISOs and have more noise in order to get the shot. So it's the same mindset, different application. It's more about, as David is saying, an awareness that it's simply not a matter of stopping down equals more sharpness. Right. There's a point at where that kind of stops, and then this.
Yeah, it's like a bell curve, right? Yeah. So as we go up, it's like stopping down, we're getting more depth of field, everything's getting sharper, and then all of a sudden it starts going down the other side. And you don't want to be caught down here, f22. So that's not ideal. What's really handy on, say, the M11 that's counteracted that is a base ISO of 64. That's not a pull setting like we had previously on the SL, where a 50 is not real. That's a pull setting. The 64 ISO is to counteract some of that, so you don't have to stop down as much, and you get really great image quality at ISO 64.
Yeah, sweet. Let's go to the next one.
But we're not talking about what to do.
Right, we're talking about what not to do.
Don't. Yeah.
What not to do. What's next, Jose?
All right. Don't stack a filter onto a UV filter.
Oh, this is a big one.
I'll let you go for that.
I don't think people are doing this as much as I used to see, but it still does happen. Essentially, one of the questions that we get all the time is, do I need or should I use UV or clear filters for lens protection? And I tell people there are basically 2 downsides to that. Number one is the added cost. Maybe nominal, maybe not, but that is technically a downside. Number 2 is if you find yourself frequently using creative filters, NDs, color filters, polarizers, or other wacky things, you will have to constantly be removing your clear or UV filter every time you want to use one of those creative filters. Because if you say, oh, I'll just stack my polarizer on top of my UV and call it a day, what you're essentially doing is creating an additional lens element, an air-gapped lens element, in front of your already perfectly designed Leica lens, and dramatically, not always dramatically, but often dramatically reducing image quality or making the lens considerably more susceptible to flare.
Yeah, especially if you're shooting in daylight where the sun is going to be coming into your frame, because it'll bounce around in there and just be really, really ugly.
So the question is, should you have UV filters? This question's from Mike K, because I know he's has lots of lenses with UV filters and is suddenly like, wait, do I need them? And the answer is, it's not a bad idea to store your lenses with filters. It's not a bad idea, clear filters. It's not a bad idea to use clear filters. It's simply an awareness of, if you know, let's say you're going out for the day to shoot waterfalls and you know you're gonna have polarizers on all your lenses, or you'll be using one polarizer and switching it between a few lenses, simply to leave your UV filters at home, because otherwise you'll have to, every single time you want to use your polarizer, take off the UV, put it away, and keep it safe and clean, put the back on.
It's a lot of risk for damage.
Yes, so in general, is it bad to use UV filters? No, they protect the front of their lens and they keep it safe if you're in a harsh environment especially. But be aware that you do not ever want to stack another filter on top of a UV filter. Now, it's okay to stack an ND and a polarizer at times because you're already cutting out so much light, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. Not ideal, but you specifically do not want to stack with a UV filter.
Well, that's also why I'm a big fan of the dark polarizers because I'm now eliminating stacking filters. When I have a 6-stop ND combined with a polarizer in one single filter, one layer. So I'm not doing any stacking and I'm retaining greater image quality and it's just better. You have less pieces of glass in front of the lens.
Yeah. So if you have a UV filter on your lens, it's totally fine. If you leave them that way, if you store them that way, totally fine. You're protecting the front element. But if you're going to use other filters, just make sure you remove the UV or the clear filter first.
Yeah, don't do it.
There you go.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. Right.
All right, what's next?
Don't shoot with a collapsible lens collapsed.
Where did you put that one?
Here.
Oh, you added it there because it's not on my
it's not on yours.
my
That's okay.
Okay.
Jose has it. All right. So for those of you that haven't seen it, this is a current collapsible lens in the Leica lineup.
Well, this rule only actually doesn't apply to light lens all the time.
Not all the time.
Yeah.
There's an exception.
Okay.
There's an exception. But throughout the ages of Leica, there have been collapsible lenses, whether that is the old 50-2.8 or you've got older 90 f2 collapsibles. People have collapsibles, okay? And what's cool about a collapsible, I think Jose is coming in on me here.
You're a little bit soft there.
Am I?
There you go.
Perfect. Okay, this is a collapsible 90 millimeter. And you see it collapses, which is great because it doesn't take up a lot of room in your camera bag. And when you're ready to use it, you uncollapse it or expand it, okay? Either if it's not fully locked in, it can sag or go into a middle position. On a rangefinder only, if you're using this on an M and you're not using live view, you may not even realize it because the focus cam isn't in any way aware of whether the lens is opened or closed, right? It's the same exact focus cam positioning regardless of that. See? Okay, you can come back here, Jose. The issue, of course, is this lens is designed to be operated and focused when extended. The collapse position is just for storage. I know that sounds painfully obvious, but I have seen where people either didn't have it engaged all the way or locked in, and it was either partially out or all the way in. And as we like to say, it yields very artistic results because what you're going to end up with is basically just everything is blurry and halo-y.
And I'll mention that all of the vintage, pretty much all the vintage collapsible lenses, you run the risk of actually damaging the shutter or the sensor of a digital M
if you collapse it.
If you collapse them while they're on the camera. So we always want to make sure to keep them extended. I often see people put rubber bands on the barrel section, the middle section, to keep them from collapsing all the way. The modern 50mm 2.8 is the exception as well as this.
This one, yeah.
Those can be collapsed on the camera without harming it. But
and you can see why.
Yeah, they don't go past it. But I still always make sure that when I'm attaching or dismounting the lens that it is extended and locked. I always do that. I don't ever attach or remove the lens while it's collapsed.
Right, because this one, as I showed in the close-up a second ago, doesn't actually break the plane of the lens flange.
The LMR 50 does, but it just doesn't go back far enough.
Right, not enough.
To cause damage, yeah. So, the exception before we move on is that this can be collapsed on the macro adapter M to get infinity focus with live view, but it's not rangefinder calibrated. This is the only sort of worker or exception to that rule of do not use your collapsed lenses collapsed.
Yes.
Which is this. Cool. Let's go.
Don't do it.
Let's move on.
All right. Don't leave your firmware unupdated.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, this is a sore point for Jeff.
So, I talked about this a lot, but I'm going to talk about it again. When you buy a Leica camera, you're not just paying for that camera. What you're paying for is all of the R&D Leica did to make it, and all of the R&D they continue to do to make it better. A camera has its own software, its own operating system, like your phone, your computer, your car. That's called its firmware. And the firmware is what describes the camera's behavior, the settings, everything that you see, the way the camera operates is driven by firmware. Leica, and all camera companies do this, but this is a Leica show. So Leica specifically frequently will provide updates to your camera's firmware, to your camera's operating system to fix bugs, to make it operate faster, more smoothly, to improve power management, to add new features, all kinds of things. And sometimes they'll do a few over a short time. Sometimes we go a year or two, but they're consistently updating the firmware. And I cannot tell you how often, too often, I see people using cameras with old firmware. Now, here's the thing. I understand, we both all understand if you are maybe unsure how to do the update or don't know how or are uncomfortable, that's okay. That's the point of having us, is if you buy a camera from us or you have a question or you're in the store, we will help you either by doing it for you if you're in front of us or we'll walk you through it. David has tons of great articles on Red Dot Forum about how to update the firmware.
On various
Anytime
cameras,
there's a new firmware update, you should pull up the M10 article. David will write a Red Dot Forum article about it. He'll talk about what it is, what are the improvements, and also usually provide a link to download the firmware. Leica will often offer huge changes. One of the best examples is the most recent.
This one.
We just saw firmware update 1.3 or 1.3?
Yeah.
For, yes, 1.3.0.0 for the M11, which added perspective control, highlight weighted metering, storage options for the M11, and generally they do some bug fixes under the hood they may not always tell you about. This is free. This is free. You get new features for free. All you have to do is do the update and you're getting new features. Another reason to keep your firmware update is generally the Leica Photos app is needing the current version of the camera's firmware to work properly.
And
so,
here, if a quick search, as you can see here,
yeah,
just
switch to David, Jose. Thank you.
Yeah, so a quick search in red.forum.com, just the website. I typed in firmware, and you can see every time there's a new firmware, we document it.
99% of the time.
99%.
Yeah, I know we're not perfect. The reason I'm saying that is because
there's maybe incremental updates.
Yeah, there's some, but the point is that.
But some of them, we actually have a comprehensive rundown like this, for instance. So this was in about a year ago in early 2021. There was a comprehensive slew of M10 and M240 cameras. But because there's so many variations of those, there's different firmware for every single one. We listed out with direct links to download every single firmware, and then also how to update each specific type of camera. We have different instructions on every single different one. So it's just something that, we're always very aware of, and we want to make sure that, like Josh is saying, that you're getting the most out of your camera, most up-to-date features, most up-to-date performance. When new lenses are added, Leica always puts those lens profiles into the camera. And this is just on the M. If you look at the SL, you can come back to us, Jose. If you look at the SL, I mean, massive features for SL2, SL2S. When the camera came out, the SL2S was great. And then a month later, the SL2S firmware update came out, and it was like a whole nother camera.
They added multi-shot in firmware. I mean, we're talking about game-changing. We're not talking about changing the font. We're talking about game-changing featers through firmware that is 100% free.
Well, they changed the autofocus algorithm.
Yeah.
They changed the video formatting. They put HDC in.
Don't be afraid to update your firmware because...
And I would say, just to add on to the SL system as well, the lens firmware is also being updated for SL primes, SL zooms.
Not the 24 to 70 though, not yet.
Not yet. And a lot of people have asked us, how do I update them in my lenses? I can't update it from the menu. The key is if you have the most up-to-date firmware, camera firmware on your SL2 or SL2S, or SL601, when you mount the lens onto the camera, the camera will detect that it's not updated, and it will update it for you. So before you go out and shoot, make sure to mount all of your lenses with a full battery, and all of them will be updated.
Also, I mean, they improve small bugs and fixes and small things that can be, messing with your camera, or maybe your Photos app is not working, and it's just because you need that update.
True.
So,
yes, I cannot express this strongly enough.
Don't neglect your firmware.
If you own a Leica digital camera, don't do it now because you're watching our captivating show. But when the show is over, look at your firmware, either go on Red Dot Forum or go on Leica's website and see what's the current version, and either update it or if you're not sure how to do it, reach out to us or reach out to someone who knows and get the firmware updated. Most of the time, it does reset your camera, so you'll want to back up your settings or I often just redo it.
But not in M11.
True. Yeah. I like sometimes to start from scratch and just make sure all my stuff is right. So please, 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 please update your firmware.
For Josh.
For me.
For Josh.
Do it
Just
for the dog.
He's so cute. Do it for Josh.
Okay, that's enough rambling on that. So let's, again, you're not alone. Like if you need help, come find us. Anyway, what's next?
Don't change lenses with the SL pointed up.
I mean,
yeah.
So
why don't you demonstrate what we shouldn't be doing?
Don't do this. Yeah. Why? Well, there's a very lovely piece of glass in here, as you can see. Jose is gonna cut. When you take the lens off, the camera right now is turned off. The shutter is in its natural state open. It is not closed. The shutter does not close when the camera is turned off. So that leaves the sensor wide open and exposed, which makes it really easy to clean, but not so great if you're changing lenses outdoors where there is dust and debris, or the worst that I can imagine, water droplets. You don't want that. And especially in the springtime, we've got, pollen blowing everywhere and dust, and it's a bad situation. So when you change lenses, first, get out of the wind, get to kind of a sheltered location if you can. And when you change lenses, just be prepared, like have your other lens ready to go and just change as quickly as you can while the camera is down, certainly not pointing up. So just don't leave it out like this, because I have seen people changing lenses because they have all their caps on every lens. They take it off like this and they set it down, and then they're like this, and they have to take that off and put this on, and by the time they do that, all the dust is on your sensor now. So just don't do that.
Yeah, because in the days of having a shutter over your sensor, that's one thing, but now we have the sensor just out in the open.
It's sitting there.
So it doesn't take much for it to get all gooped up.
Gooped up.
Gooped up, it's a technical term.
Which actually there's another don't do.
You want to just jump to that one right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I have some questions about it anyway, so.
I'm going to say don't do this. Can you give me the stick?
I can give you the stick.
I'm going to demonstrate what not to do.
Well, he's going to do something wrong already, I can already tell you, because he's about to demonstrate this, but he's missing a critical step before, which is, I'll add this.
Please.
Don't do what he's about to do without first using a blower bulb on your sensor. Now he's going to demonstrate.
Are we doing everything wrong then? Or are we going to blow it off?
Well, the reason is, anytime you're coming in contact with glass, optical glass, whether it's the lens, your sensor, your LCD screen, your glasses, whatever, you want to remove any loose debris or grit before you rub something or touch something against it so it doesn't get scratched up. So every time that I'm about to clean something, the first thing I do, even like when I clean my glasses often, is use a blower to blow off anything that's just sitting there, and then David will demonstrate.
In other words, those pieces of dust or debris could be abrasive, and you could be rubbing it in and gouging your sensor, which is, don't do that.
And it's not necessarily that one time it's going to do harm. It's the cumulative effect of always doing that. That's how you get cleaning marks on lenses and how you get little micro scratches, and it's bad news.
So I am going to show you what not to do. Now, I'm going to do it very gently so I don't damage the camera, but here we go.
You got the close-up, Jose?
I'm trying to get it right. There we go. So you can see the sensor clearly. This is my little iLead sensor cleaning stick. The camera is turned off, and you should not clean your sensor with the camera turned off because, is it going to do it?
Hard to see it.
It's hard to see
I
it.
can hear it.
You can hear it. Don't do this. So what's happening is the sensor is wiggling about. If I actually try to apply some pressure on this, the sensor is just going to move around, and those tiny little motors could get damaged. What you want to do is turn the camera on. It goes against conventional wisdom, but when you do this, this is actually the proper way to clean the sensor, because the sensor at this point won't move around. So hopefully I didn't give anyone crazy anxiety because I'm sitting here cleaning a sensor away from me.
Fine.
But it's okay. It's my camera.
Yeah, exactly. So to summarize.
Don't here are the don'ts. Don't take your lens off and leave the camera sitting up outside. Don't clean the sensor without blowing the dust off of it first. And don't try to use a sensor cleaning stick or a wet cleaner, sensor swab, whatever, without turning the camera on, which engages the image stabilization.
This is specific to the SL2 and the SL2S.
Yes.
Yeah, just heads up.
Okay? So those are things not to do with your SL2 or SL2S. If you have an SL601, first generation, everything applies, but you can turn the camera off and clean it.
Right, because there's no stabilization to the sensor. The sensor is fixed in place, so it doesn't matter if the camera's on or off.
Yeah.
Well done.
What about for the M's?
Doesn't matter. Well,
You should turn them off.
Well, you can turn off.
No, you have to.
The M's have to be on.
In sensor cleaning
because
mode.
right, because any camera with a shutter over the sensor has to be on and in sensor cleaning mode to clean the sensor.
Yes.
The advice that David's giving here is specific to the SL2 because the sensor is not permanently fixed in one spot. It can move around.
It jiggles around. It's hard to see, though.
And you don't want to damage the delicate motors by trying to do it while the camera is turned off.
Remember, these motors, when used in multi-shot, are capable of moving half a pixel in every direction, and the pixels are 4 microns.
Yeah.
So this is motors that are sensitive enough to do 2 microns in every direction precisely. And you're going to go in there and wiggle a stick around on them? Not a good idea.
Bad news.
Bad news. Bad news.
All right, what's next, Jose?
Okay. Don't reuse SD cards without formatting them first.
Yes.
I
Well, David doesn't reuse SD
Right,
cards.
so you could just chop off the second half of that sentence. My opinion, so this is, Josh would say.
You go first and I'll go next.
Right, so my opinion is, and I think I'm going to grab a bag of SD cards here.
A bag.
A baggie of
look at
SD
all
cards.
This is insanity.
All right, so these are shot and used SD cards needing to be filed, but these are not to be written over. So my general rule is don't erase SD cards. End of sentence. Don't format them, don't erase them. For me, they are my third line of backup. So I've gone over this previously in other episodes.
So you should go over it again if we have new
But I'm going to go over it again
yeah.
in case someone new. Yeah. So why in the world would I use a memory card once and then put it away without erasing it? And the reason is because let's say that I am out on location or I'm on a trip, and sure, I'm taking my memory card out of my camera, I'm putting it in my computer every night, and I'm backing it up and doing my edits. I'm in Lightroom. My computer disappears. I leave it in the back of a cab. Somebody steals it out of my hotel room. It falls off a cliff. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Either way, if my pictures are just living in that computer, they're gone. But if I have, I'm going to borrow yours, my memory card wallet that looks suspiciously like Josh's, if I have all my memory cards that I've shot and I have them in my camera bag on my person, not with my laptop, I've separated them. If I lose those, I have my Lightroom catalog backing up in the cloud. The pictures are too big to back up in the cloud because it's like 100 gigabytes. It's too much. Yeah. But the Lightroom catalog, I'll make a new catalog for each trip I go on, and it's just a couple 100 megabytes. Easy to upload to iCloud, no problem. So I have my Lightroom catalog, all my edits and all that, and sorting is all in the cloud. So even if the computer vanishes tomorrow, I haven't lost anything except my raw files. But if I have my raw files on the cards, I can just reload them right onto the drive, relink them into Lightroom, no problem. And I actually had to do that on one outing to Iceland, where I had everything on an external SSD, a Samsung SSD, and I was editing on the plane on the way back to the US, like 3,000 images. And in the commotion of getting off the plane, going through customs, somewhere in JFK is an SSD with my pictures on it, and gone. All the pictures, gone, poof. I didn't freak out because I had all of the pictures on 3 or 4 SD cards, and I just got a new drive, loaded them on, nothing was lost. So in my world, don't erase SD cards. They are a great medium-term backup because they're solid state, they'll last for a number of years, and even if I have a drive failure or whatever, I could always reload my cards if I needed to do that. Now I'm going to let Josh take over because he doesn't believe in what I believe.
Right, so I don't just treat my memory cards as a roll of film. I actually do reuse them. I'm not going on quite as many globe-trotting adventures as David is, so maybe my mindset's a bit different. But to get back to the original don't, which is don't reuse memory cards without formatting them first. Yeah. This is especially true if you're using memory cards in different cameras.
Yeah.
You always want to format the memory card in the camera you're going to use it in before you take it out and shoot. Of course, you want to make sure that the images on that card have been uploaded and backed up before you format it. But what you don't want to do is just throw a card in and go. These days, it's not as much of an issue as it used to be, but you're increasing your chances of memory card issues or performance slowdowns or corruption by not freshly formatting the card before using it. You also want to make sure that when you get out on your next photo adventure or your next shoot, that you're not giving up half the memory card space to a bunch of old images you've already backed up. You want to be able to start from scratch. So every time that I use a memory card, I put it in the camera, I make sure that it's been backed up, I format it in that camera I'm going to use, and I go to town. This is especially useful for one of our earlier tips about firmware. You always want to use a freshly formatted card in the camera you're going to format or going to update with the firmware update. Mm-hmm. The exception that would be the M10D, where you can't actually format it. Nope. Just format it in an M10P instead. But anyway, format your cards. And the way that I keep track is I have this like little think tank pixel pocket rocket thing. And I essentially, this one is pretty much fresh, but essentially what I do is if the memory card is pointed up and face out, it's formatted, it's ready to go in whatever camera I'm shooting that day. If the memory card is facing the other way, meaning it's facing backwards, I can't guess one out, here we go. Facing backwards, so I see the back of the card, that means it's shot and not backed up, so I don't want to touch it, I don't want to format it. If the memory card is facing forward but pointed down, that means the images are backed up, but I haven't formatted it yet for use in the camera I'm shooting. So I have a little system that I use so I can quickly glance at my card wallet and know which cards I can just grab and go, which cards I can grab but have to format, and which cards don't get touched until they're backed up. Yeah, that's about covers.
Okay.
Me and my insanity.
Perfect. Someone asked what cards I use. I think, yeah.
We use the same ones pretty much.
Close-up still on me. I use these because I just grabbed one. Is that sharp? I can't even tell. There you go. This is what I use. I use these Lexar Professional 1667X cards. They're UHS2. You can see the 2 rows. They're nice and fast, 250 megasecond. And I use 128s, 256s in the SL2 and the Q2 monochrome, and sometimes 64s, like in my CL.
Yeah, I also keep old cards around, like, because well, number one, I test a lot of cameras, like stuff that comes untraded. Number two, I like to go out and shoot with some of this stuff sometimes. I keep like an old 2 gig card if I get a DMR, an old 4 gig card if I get an M8, an old 16 gig card if I get an M9. So I do have a kind of like a throwback collection of SD cards that I keep around because I know they work. Yeah. So I have cards specific to these old models.
Yeah, and in fact, I even have cards in the camera right now.
Look at that. So if I get like Digilux 2, anyway, so that's
Digilux 2.
Yeah, so you know this stuff comes through my desk.
Classic.
You know, I gotta play around.
Classic.
Jose, what's next?
All right. Don't forget to set the time and date on your camera.
Huge.
Yeah, so I feel like this is one of those things that we've all made that mistake at one point or another because we've used so many cameras for so many years, and it's, you know, and then I get back and I'm trying to sort stuff in Lightroom, especially if you use more than one camera. So, you know,
Albert, if you're watching,
yeah, this is
you're the best at this. You're the one who doesn't forget.
So I use a Q2 monochrome and an SL2 pretty much, yeah, simultaneously. And it's great when the time and date match and you're in Lightroom and you can see pictures in date order. What's really a drag is when it thinks one is 1999 and they're like, you know, completely separated.
Yeah.
It's just not great from a documentation standpoint. If you're trying to find your photos later on, you say, oh, well, I was in Ireland in 2023 and whatever. And how come I don't have any pictures from them? Because you didn't set your time and date. Also be aware and cognizant that when you change time zones, the camera doesn't always change your time zone with you unless it has a GPS. So if you're using a VisFlex type 020 on, say, an M10 or an M10P, an M10R. This does have GPS functionality, and it can set the time and date for you no matter where you are in the world. If you have an original SL601.
Oh, I want to interrupt for a second. This only works if you have a satellite signal.
That's, well,
So what I usually do, even when I'm using this, is set my time and date manually and not assume I have a signal at that given moment.
Okay,
So
fair.
I've made that mistake where I've like turned on GPS time, but I'm shooting inside of a venue or a car show or something, and I'm still in like 1971. So quick. Even with GPS, even with the Photos app, all the stuff, I'm still always double checking my time and date and time zone before I go out and start my day of photographing.
For sure, for sure. So don't forget.
Yeah.
Make sure to set your time and date, especially when you're traveling and changing time zones. And especially when you have more than one camera system, because that is just a pain. For organizational purposes, it's really just a pain.
Yeah. Nice. Next.
All right, Josh.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, it's like
This can't be good.
directed.
Don't throw your Leica boxes away.
Oh, my goodness. If you want to trigger me, that is how you do it.
Oh, my gosh.
I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying not to get fired up about this. So
Don't get too fired up.
cardboard by itself doesn't necessarily have a lot of value. But the cardboard that you get with your Leica products has lots of value. Every Leica product comes with a box. That's how it works. Well, except for parts. Every camera and lens comes with a box when you buy it new. And you may think, I'm going to keep this forever and say, I don't need this extra cardboard and foam and nonsense sitting around my house. I'm going to throw it out. But then the new one comes out and you go, well, I need to have this new one. So the first thing you want to do is you go to your favorite Leica store and you say, I want to trade in my whatever for this new thing. And they're going to say, great, do you have the box? And you'll say, no, I threw that away. Depending on the item, a box can be $100 or $200 of additional market value, if you will. If you look to the past and you look at the auctions, you look at vintage lenses and vintage analog M's, the addition of a box and packaging can be thousands of dollars sometimes because it's provenance and it's a testament to the care and the thoughtfulness of the previous owner or owners that those things were maintained.
Well, also with certain collectibles, it's also the completeness of it.
Absolutely. But completeness to me, as a fanatical, crazy person, is relevant for any item, whether it's a small thing or a large thing. So the challenge is also from a shipping standpoint.
Yeah.
It's much easier and safer to ship products back and forth in their boxes.
True.
And from a value standpoint, it's just nice to have all of the accoutrement. If you don't, what ends up happening, I brought an example of this, is you end up with this. Now this is an M10. Now if you've ever bought an M10 or any variant brand new, you know it comes in this nice outer gray box and the silver box with the little drawers and the black box and everything is all nice in its little pouch. It's beautiful.
It's just so.
It's like if you watch it on one of David's unboxing videos on YouTube, it's fantastic. And it's nice to do that, and it's nice to give the next owner the chance to do that as well. So what happens when you don't keep any of that stuff is you end up with this. Now, this is a great deal for the next owner because they're saving money on the fact that it sells for less because this is about as bare bones as you can get. This is literally body, USA power cable, battery, and charger. Like just enough to get the camera to work without a lens and a memory card at least. But this is probably $200 less, maybe more, than the equivalent if it was totally complete with everything. So I guess what I'm saying is
Save your B&Ps.
save your box, your packaging, your paperwork, your pouches, your hot shoe covers, all those little knickknacks, because eventually they will add value to your item, whether you go to sell it or trade it.
Don't throw your stuff away.
If you don't have a place to keep it, buy a bigger house. That'll tell you. If you have kids, put them up for adoption and use their rooms to store your stuff. Do what you got to do, okay? Because nothing is more important than Leica cardboard. Nothing.
Okay. It's made of pure silver, right?
Basically, yeah. All right, what's next?
All right. Don't wait until an important photo trip to test your gear.
This is for you.
Listen,
Someone who takes many important photo trips.
if you're gonna go to those places, you're putting in the effort to go to these destinations. Just as a little bit of a plug, I am leaving in 2 days to lead our Patagonia workshop with Peter, and we're gonna have a great time. But you better be darn sure that following this, as I said, this is mine, and some of these other things are coming with me as well. I am going to be testing all of this and making sure that the firmware is updated, that the lens is all focused properly, that everything is fully functional before I get there, because once you're in the middle of nowhere, there's no way to replace these things. So you want to make sure and test out your gear, make sure that everything is set up the way you want it to be. I don't want to be futzing around on the first day of shooting, working through my settings. You know, oh, why did I have that set to that? Why did I have this set to this? No, everything should be set up as you're packing your camera bag so that all that is out of the way and you're just ready to go when you get to your destination. You should also not forget to charge your batteries. If you have a bunch of extra batteries, you want those to be charged when you put them in your camera bag. Same kind of thing. Just get your stuff together, get it tested, make sure all your firmware is updated. Yeah, and make sure everything's working so that you can address it in time before you are not able to address it anymore.
I mean, I'm doing things like testing short exposures, long exposures, rangefinder calibration, turning the focus rings, turning the zoom rings, checking for diopters or unusual diopter adjustments, firmware, batteries, memory card,
Dust on the sensor.
Making sure that I have the necessary cables for the charger or the chargers, USB cables, all those things. Now, I realize that not everyone uses their Leica gear all the time. David and I are, even in our jobs, will go weeks at a time without using certain pieces of equipment. So it's not like we're saying, you better use it all the time. So no, we get it. Sometimes stuff sits on a shelf for a while. You got a big trip to Paris, you got a big trip to Patagonia, whatever.
And the gremlins, they come at night.
Yeah,
and they decide to change things.
The time to figure that stuff out isn't when you're there.
And be like, no!
And then call me on an international line saying you need another adapter or whatever because yours is broken. It's check all that stuff out ahead of time, at least a week. Give yourself a chance to replace, repair, or adjust, or get some help so that when you're in the field, so to speak, or on the tundra, or whatever's in Patagonia, rainforest?
I don't think it's tundra.
I don't know it's there. Anyway.
Beautiful things.
You're ready to go because time is money, and that's multiplied by a factor of many once you're somewhere exotic because you're not going to want to go back.
And update your firmware.
Update your firmware. But that goes without saying.
Yeah. Just be prepared. It's better to do. Don't wait. I should say, don't wait to the last minute, and don't wait past the last minute to when you're already there when you should be figuring things out. You know, it's going to take away from your experience. It's going to take away from your photography. I mean, again, you know, look, it's happened to me where it's like, oh my gosh, look at that rare whatever thing over there, wildlife, that like, oh, it's slinking through the woods. Oh, let me put my 90 to 280 on. Put it on. Updating firmware. Updating lens firmware.
It happened to me too.
And it's like, are you kidding me right now?
Happened once.
Yeah. And all it takes is once to like be kicking yourself because you've now missed that moment. Or let's say just the most perfect sunrise and it's just the sun's peeking up over the horizon and you change lenses and it's updating lens firmware for the next 5 minutes and you miss it. So do that at home while you're packing your stuff. Don't wait, because if you had tested that lens and mounted on the camera, it would have updated the firmware ahead of time.
Yeah.
So don't wait to the last minute. Do your stuff.
Next.
Don't use your shirt to clean your gear.
Wait, say that again, Jose?
Don't use your shirt to clean your gear. Or anything else, clothing.
Yeah, we're not really wearing the right shirts for this.
No, we're not.
This is the plaid shirt club, as usual.
I see a lot of people with t-shirts where they just like, oh, whatever, or a sweater or something. It's like, please don't do that. Use these. They make them for a reason. Lens cloths. Use lens cloths. I always carry one in my pocket when I'm not shooting, so I can clean my glasses or clean a camera.
Yeah.
Or hand it to somebody else to say, don't use your shirt, use this, which I have done on more than one occasion.
Yeah.
In my camera bag, I have multiple lens cloths. In fact, little trick, because if you're shooting around wet things, I keep maybe 3 or 4 clean and dry ones in a gallon Ziploc bag, which I will keep either inside my camera bag, or if I know I'm going to a wet place, I put them inside my rain shell so that I know I have clean, dry lens cloths. I don't have to use a shirt or whatever, the burlap bag lying around. Use a clean lens cloth for your lenses. They are expensive glass. They are lovely, and we want to keep them lovely. Lens cloths.
Well said.
Lens cloths.
I think we made our point. Let's keep. I'm like looking at the time. Like we thought we had not enough. We have way too much.
We have way too much.
Next.
Okay. Don't shoot JPEG only.
This is a controversial one because there's probably people watching that do this.
All right, shoot. Nah,
Let's try to make this short and sweet. Go.
don't shoot JPEG.
Just for a t-shirt made of microfiber. That's actually brilliant. Thank you, Louis, for that piece of advice. In fact, all my clothes are microfiber. I don't know about the rest of you watching. Everything in my life is based, and all my floors are bouncy rubber, so if I drop a lens, it just counts right back up. I've dedicated my entire existence to the preservation of Leica equipment.
I love it. I love it.
All right, don't shoot JPEG only.
Don't shoot JPEG only. Again, is there anything wrong with JPEG? Not inherently so. Are you sacrificing the possibility of both higher quality and extracting more information out of a RAW file? Yes, you are. And even if you say, oh, it doesn't matter, this is just for sharing, it's just for, you don't know when you're going to get the picture of a lifetime. And if you don't know that ahead of time and you have your camera set to JPEG, well, that's what you're stuck with. You're stuck with JPEG. I've also seen where people set their camera to JPEG for just random stuff, you know, oh, this is just throwaway stuff, it's no big deal. And then they forget to change it to RAW or RAW plus JPEG, and they realize that they've shot that way for a whole day, and they're banging their head against the wall because now they've sacrificed all that extra dynamic range, all that extra detail, the file malleability, the color malleability is all gone. And I'm gonna kind of echo what Josh is thinking right now, which is you're paying all this money for top quality Leica cameras and lenses. Why wouldn't you want to get the most quality out of them?
Now, I will say this. I understand that there are people out there who don't know the software and may not be comfortable with a RAW workflow. That's okay. No one expects everyone to just magically know all of this stuff. What we're trying to preach is an awareness of what's possible so that you can set yourself up to get the most out of your cameras. So what I tell people who are maybe not familiar yet with the RAW workflow or not comfortable yet, shoot RAW plus JPEG. Then you've got the JPEGs, you can do anything you want with, totally cool, but you've always got those DNG RAW files there. So once you learn that workflow, you can go back and play with those images and edit them and really make them as good as they could possibly be.
Even if you only want to do that for your absolute best shots, you'll have those. Even if you want to pay somebody, a digital tech or digital artist, and you say, you know what, I got this amazing shot in XYZ, I think it would be really great as a big print. Listen, here's the file. Can you edit this for me and, you know, for a big print?
Yeah.
And you'll have that additional information. There's no harm. I showed you a 256 gig memory card.
Yeah.
I mean, memory is cheap. Hard drives are cheap. Like, don't let card space be the dictating factor. Don't let hard drive space be the dictating factor. Storage continues to drop in price and grow in size. Don't let it hold you back. I echo what Josh says. If you're uncomfortable, shoot RAW plus JPEG. Best of both worlds. If you're comfortable with, you know, a completely RAW workflow, forget JPEGs entirely, and then you don't even have to worry about the danger of possibly shooting a JPEG.
There you go. I want to tangent very quickly and answer a question that has nothing to do with, but well, I have a captive audience. Someone asked if Leica has done firmware yet for use the VisiFlex 2 on the M10s. No. The reason we know that is because it's not on Red Dot Forum. You know, David, whenever this happens, this is going to be huge news. It will be on Red Dot Forum. It's not going to be a secret. But everybody was asking us about buying VisiFlex 2s in January because like, oh, it's going to happen. I'm like, just wait.
Yep.
Leica, they do care, but they're also kind of slow, as you know. So no, firmware hasn't been announced yet. We have no idea when it's going to happen.
It's coming in March.
March of what year?
March.
Anyway, slight tangent there. Thank you for asking.
Slight tangent. Jose, let's get back on track.
What do you got?
Okay. Don't forget to adjust your diopter.
Yes. You want to take this one or want me to take it?
You can take it.
So when I was in college, there is an equipment loaning library, whatever you want to call it, where you could go and check out equipment. And they had cameras and lenses and all kinds of stuff. And there was one person that we all knew was really kind of a jerk and really very high and mighty and someone nobody wanted to deal with. And this person had the chance to take out, I think it was like a D700 or something that was current back then for a long trip. And they were so excited and they made a big deal about how blah, blah, blah. And they come back from the trip and they go, man, every picture I took was out of focus. This is a nightmare. I was a waste. So I was like, can I see it? Can I see the camera real quick? And they were like, sure. And it turned out the diopter of the viewfinder was just racked all the way to the negative position. So all they had to do was, I was like, oh, just go like this. And I handed it back to this person. They got what they deserved. My point being is, on the cameras that have the integrated diopters, that would be SL, SL2, SL2S, 007, CL, Q2, and the VisaFlex 020 and VisaFlex 2, always make sure the diopter is dialed into your eyesight before you get out and shoot. David and I both wear glasses. Even with my glasses, I do require a couple of clicks of diopter adjustment most of the time. Now, the trick to getting the diopter adjustment dialed in, which we've covered before, but it was a while ago, is here's another don't look at the actual image through the viewfinder to get the diopter adjusted. Look at the text in the menu text. Whether that's, if it's an EVF, the menu text, if it's an OVF, optical viewfinder, the text at the bottom with the shutter speed or whatever. What I usually do, like for the example, like for an SL2, is I leave the lens cap on and I look, so that way I'm not distracted at all by the live view image. And I use the text on the top and bottom rows, or I'll set up the grid lines, or that, and use that to adjust the diopter. And once the text is nice and crisp, I know my diopter is dialed in. So again,
so this would be in the EVF like that, and you're looking through and turning the diopter just visually to where this menu text, this interface is sharp.
Exactly.
Because that isn't sharp right there because it's not in focus.
Right, so if you're looking at that, at your image, if the image isn't perfectly, totally sharp, you're gonna be just you're spinning your wheels because the diopter is never gonna get it nice and sharp.
Right, so you're better off focusing on that because you know what sharp text should look like.
Exactly, so sometimes, taking the cameras in and out of the bag or carrying them around, the diopters can get slightly tweaked or sometimes dramatically, especially on the VisaFlex 020 where it's just a big free spinning wheel.
Yeah.
So the first thing I do before I get out and shoot is I check my diopter status. I look at where it is and I make sure it's where I need it to be.
See the little line
you
right
could,
there.
put a little gaff tape over something like this as well if you need to. But regardless of that, on any camera with an adjustable diopter or any viewfinder, just quickly check it before you start shooting to make sure that you don't suffer like not really my friend, my colleague, associate did back in the day, who got what they deserve. So always check your diopters. Next.
Okay. Don't trust infinity focus.
David, tell us why. Well, explain what that means and give us what are you looking for?
I don't know, lens.
21. That's fine. Okay.
So
lost video and sound. Anyone else notice that?
I don't think so.
Just making sure.
I don't see anyone else.
Doing okay?
Yeah, maybe. We'll see.
I don't know. I always get paranoid because if I have like traumatic flashbacks.
Everybody?
I think we're fine, but
We're fine? We're fine? Okay.
We'll keep going. And if anyone sees an issue, just let us know.
I mean, I feel like there would be a million comments.
Yeah.
Okay. Here we go. So on an M lens, here we go.
I'll keep an eye on it, David. We're good.
So you'll see that there's infinity. So clearly, especially wide open. So let's say this is a 2814, and I go to infinity. Can I always trust infinity? No. Is infinity always infinity?
You cannot. Everybody says we're okay. Okay.
Everybody.
Thanks. We appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Well, why not? I mean, it says infinity right on the lens.
That's right.
So it must be fine. In fact, I notice this sometimes on the SL2 where I'm shooting because there is a little distance measurement when I'm shooting manual focus with back button focus, autofocus. Sometimes I'll focus on something really, really far away, and it's like 532 feet or meters or whatever it's set to.
Yeah.
Not infinity. I'm like, really? That's not infinity. And if I set it to infinity manually, where I turn the lens all the way, it's not totally sharp. It's not critically sharp. So a lot of the lenses actually will either go past infinity slightly or it's just not 100% calibrated. If it's an M lens with SL lenses, sometimes, again, they'll go past infinity. Sometimes it depends on temperature, conditions, whatever. Don't trust just the infinity mark. Always visually verify your focus.
So if you're shooting a landscape, don't just rack the lens to infinity and go.
No.
It's not, you're going to be like, it's not working. Like, yeah. So actually focus. Now we have live view, so you can always cross-reference that as well.
And you can zoom right in or take a test shot and zoom in on the test shot.
Yeah.
This applies, why would you shoot, I mean, I was joking about this, but it's not a joke. Why would I shoot wide open at 1.4 at infinity? Well, if I'm doing astrophotography, either Milky Way, Northern Lights, whatever, well, you're shooting things that are really, really far away. But you might be surprised that the sharpest focus is actually just a squeak in front of infinity. So always when we're doing that, we want to make sure that take a test shot at infinity and then a test shot just in front of infinity, pull them up on your screen, zoom into 100%, flip back and forth, and just make sure that you're critically sharp, because it could be the difference between an amazing picture and one that was just ever so not quite sharp.
Well said.
Yes.
Next.
All right. Don't short leg your tripod.
This is a David contribution, so
Yeah.
he's gonna show you.
Okay, here we go.
Right there. Okay.
I'm great. Okay. And I think there's actually, we're gonna do 2 tripod don'ts right together, because I'm not gonna pick this up again. So this is a tripod.
Really?
And yes, it is.
Thank you.
So when I say short leg, we're talking about either, this is gonna be very challenging to put on the table.
You're not gonna be able to do it.
I don't
I'll
know.
try to give you some space.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Give me this.
So
I got it.
when you're shooting, you want to make sure that, I do wish I had shorter legs here. Speaking of short legs, that your lens, I'm going to use this, that your lens is out in front of,
This is going great.
this is going amazing right now, in front of a leg, okay? Because you want the pressure to go forward. You don't want to be between, especially between 2 legs here, because what will happen is, if you have weight, it will just tip forward. If you have the long leg in front, it won't tip forward because the leg is fighting you. Because triangles.
Because triangles.
Because triangles.
That should have been the title of the show.
You know what? Actually, there's that little mini one. Give me the little mini
You
one
want
real
the
quick.
little baby?
Yeah, the little baby. Because this is much easier to demonstrate
Okay.
on a small scale. Okay. So if I have a camera,
Why do you take a small one? Well, you
Well-
need a plate, don't you?
there's no plate on this one.
Did I see a plate?
Maybe.
We're clearly extremely prepared.
Remember about testing all your stuff?
Some might say too prepared.
Some might say.
We scramble. I thought could have sworn I saw.
It's okay. I'm just going to clamp it in here. Okay. Now, that had to happen.
I missed it. I was looking over here.
Blooper reel.
Give me an instant replay. Oh, we did instant replay. That's what we need.
Instant replay. All right.
If Julie, if you're out there in the
Okay.
in the line, you ought to be laughing your butt off right
So,
now.
if I, on a small, yep,
my-
there's no plate. Find the plate.
You're banned. You're banned from the show. Jose's taking your place.
Oh my gosh.
Here.
Well, I am trying to mount this with no plate.
Wait, is this a new one?
I don't know.
I can open this one up.
Open that one up.
We have a
Don't
box.
mount your SL2 on a table tripod.
Yeah, with no quick release plate on the bottom.
I guess basically this show is both a demonstration, then we need to open it up.
Oh, perfect.
I know, but it's not. Oh, you got it?
Yeah, I got it. All right.
You see what I got to deal with?
We're so good at
This is
this.
ridiculous. What do you mean we? I'm doing fine. I'm not dropping anything. All I'm doing is kicking the dog a couple of times, but that's about it.
Don't kick the dog.
Oh,
Okay.
my goodness.
This was the most scary and dynamic moment of the workshop.
Deep breath. Seriously, I got to start meditating now. Are you doing okay?
No, not really.
Give me
Okay.
this thing.
I don't have nails.
I don't have
need
nails either. Oh,
Here,
Here,
I have keys.
No, I got it.
Oh, wow.
I'm just brute forcing
went
it.
right
I'm
in it.
brute forcing it.
Okay,
There.
you went right in on it. Okay,
Hey,
so I'm going to use a plate
somebody get me a beer.
because you should definitely use a tripod plate. There we go.
You doing all right?
I am doing great.
Okay.
Okay, so we're putting a plate on. I know this is like the most exciting thing since the
at
cooking channel
teamwork.
boiled
Well,
water. Right?
we need some calm now after that traumatic mishap you just had.
I know. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry about it. Okay, so we've got our plate on here. And I'm going to mount this to our little, tiny little insufficient tripod head.
Not on there. Oh, you're expanding it.
Yeah.
It's great. We could have used it. We literally have a CL right here. We could have just used this. You had to pick the largest.
Well, I want to do that for
heaviest.
a reason. Exactly.
Okay.
For a reason. So if I go sideways here and I show you, if I put these between the open legs, it is going to fall forward. Now, you say, oh, because it's a small tripod. If you set this even on a full-size tripod, a camera like this with a 24-90, and forget even a longer lens, the weight is forward, your center of gravity is forward of the tripod, and it is just going to fall forward. On a large tripod, it may seem stable at first, and if the wind blows behind you, it will knock the camera down. I see this happen all the time. So even on this small little tripod, if I extend it out over this leg, it won't fall. No matter how flimsy this is, that leg is fighting this and balancing that weight of the lens. So don't
It's magic.
do that, okay? Don't do that. Make sure that your front tripod leg is always under the lens, directly.
That was a very convoluted way of explaining that, but we got there.
Safety tip.
I'm glad that we went on this journey together.
Now, I'm gonna show you the second thing not to do with a tripod. When your tripod is locked down, I see a lot of people, especially in the moment, very, very excited to move and reposition, but they don't loosen this and turn their tripod on either the ball or on the bottom. So what I see happen is, inadvertently, they turn the camera. And what I just did, and you probably can't hear it because the mic didn't pick it up, but what's happening is you're unscrewing the tripod head because you're exerting all the torque on that the camera has, and it just unscrews it, and eventually, I'm exaggerating, but that essentially happens in the field where you've done this enough times. One, it's wobbly and you don't realize why your pictures are blurry, even though the camera's on a tripod, because it's not, the head is not locked down to the legs. And on an extreme example, they can come apart and your camera can go fall where it's not supposed to. So these are just two tripod.
There's a third one. Well, there's two more.
Please tell me.
I'm gonna tell you, and you're gonna explain it on the tripod. I have this handy piece of paper.
Okay.
One of them is, well, you made that word.
What?
Never mind.
Oh, image stabilization.
Don't use image stabilization on a tripod.
Sure. And the reason is, the camera is expecting things to move. So it's moving the sensor around, and the camera is stationary on a tripod, locked down, or at least should be. So using image stabilization can actually have the undesired effect of less stable images because the camera is inserting some predictive stabilization where it shouldn't. That doesn't always happen, but it can happen sometimes. You're best off to disable image stabilization. What I do on my camera is I have this front function button right here for image stabilization as I take the camera on and off a tripod.
See, what I do is I have a user profile called tripod, and it turns off image stabilization, it takes me out of auto ISO, which is the next question, or the next don't, which is don't use auto ISO on a tripod.
Yes.
You're getting distracted. Pay attention. I'll let you know if anything good comes in there.
I saw Ted's thing.
Hi, Ted. Anyway, why would you not use, or why shouldn't you generally use auto ISO on a tripod, David?
Generally, I want to take advantage of the lowest possible ISO for the greatest image quality, which is why I am bothering to carry a tripod. I'm not carrying this, I'm carrying a big tripod.
Exactly.
And very often I'm using ND filters because I want to have a longer exposure. If I put a 6-stop ND on here to get a longer exposure, and I'm in auto ISO and I go from 100 ISO to 6400 ISO, I'm negating my ND filter. So I'm not getting any longer exposure. So you want to take it out of auto ISO, put it in manual at, let's say, 100 or 200, or on the M11, you can go to 64 and get the absolute best dynamic range, best image quality, greatest detail, and longest exposure.
Right, and obviously somebody commented, and that's correct. If you're shooting an M on a tripod, there is no stabilization, as we are often reminded. So it's a moot point. But on all my cameras, I do have a tripod user profile, which will do things like turn off image stabilization when relevant, turn off auto ISO when relevant, activate self-timer. I have a couple of different settings that I'll incorporate so that as soon as the camera gets stuck on a tripod, I activate that profile, and then I'm good to go. I don't have to worry about individually changing all those different things. Also, I use I redirect live view solely on the LCD as well.
Interesting.
Another thing I use. So
Yeah, because you're usually behind the camera.
So if I pass my hand in front of the viewfinder, it doesn't try to turn it on.
Right. Yeah. And then technically also the short leg, which I can't demonstrate here, is if you have 2 legs extended and 1 short, you don't want the short one being here because, again, you're tipping forward and it'll just fall. You want to make sure that, generally speaking, you're as level as possible and your longest leg is in front of you.
Oh, Erwin here actually picked out one of the ones we're going to cover. So
yes,
why don't you ask us that one right now, Jose?
Can I take this off here before I have a hard time?
Yes, you can. Thank you.
Don't always shoot wide open.
Well said. Now, the controversial topic, because in the world of Leica, what we're paying for quite often is wide open performance and bokeh and magic and character and vintage, blah, blah, blah. So I get it. I love shooting wide open. But the don't here is don't always shoot wide open.
Yeah.
Don't forget that there are other apertures beyond 0.95, 1.4, or whatever. Aperture and depth of field and bokeh and lens rendering, those are creative choices that vary image to image. Sometimes, yes, it's awesome to have that super shallow depth of field, to have that fast focus fall off and it's all pretty and swirly and whatever. But sometimes that's not what you want. Sometimes it's just a matter of stopping down a couple of stops. Maybe you're shooting at you have a 1.4 lens and you go to 2.8. Sometimes it's dramatic. Sometimes it's 5.6, f8, f11, sensor dependent. So I think it, obviously we often say it does depend, but I say in general, don't get fixated on the need to always shoot wide open because you are eliminating creative possibilities by sometimes missing out. And one of the things that I like to do on live view cameras, whether that's an SL2 with an M lens or an M11 with a VisaFlex 2, is if I'm shooting something wide open, especially a close-up, I'll actually turn my lens the full range of focus to see what I may be missing if I had stopped down my depth of field more. So that's a creative tool that I will use oftentimes, especially when I'm focused close wide open, is say, what is the background, like what would the background look like if I saw more? And just start turning my focus range to simulate the effect of, in a sense, of stopping down. You could also just stop the lens down.
Sure.
But I find that if I'm stopping down in that sense, I'm also changing my focus points. Not always that simple. But anyway, don't forget you can stop down if you need to. Don't be obsessed with shooting wide open all the time. It can also get a little bit repetitive if you lean too heavily on that, especially with lenses like the Noctilux or the fan bar or vintage lenses. So yeah, that's it.
Is that the old, like, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail? When you have a Noctilux, yeah, everything looks like, you know, bokeh.
I mean, there's no rules in photography. You do whatever you want, but I'm sort of trying to give you some tips from my own experience, which is
have some variety.
Yeah, get a little bit of variety and use depth of field, use having depth of field to your advantage.
I mean, that's the same. And Jose, I'm going to take the liberty here to jump in. Don't shoot everything stop down, right? Josh said don't shoot everything wide open.
Yeah.
Don't shoot everything at f11 because you're missing out on creative possibilities of what about isolating subjects? What about having less depth of field?
So probably less of a problem in the world of Leica, but
it's less of a problem. But yeah. I think those are both accurate don't do's.
Yeah.
Don't shoot everything wide open. Don't shoot everything stop down, or take it further. Don't shoot everything at one given aperture.
And I think we should go
because I have heard this, and you may have heard this too.
Yeah.
I have gotten the question. I feel like we have gotten this question in our various episodes. What is the best aperture of X, Y, or Z?
7.
I say 5.
Oh, yeah. Fighting words. All right.
There is no, and we've answered this. There's no best aperture. There is it's a creative, what is the creative choice of what you want to accomplish with your photography given that equipment?
Yes.
There is a number of great possibilities, and that's why, you know, 3 photographers taking pictures of the same thing are going to come away with 3 different takes on it.
Well said. Well, what I was going to say, well, pull up the OneDrive. Jose, ask us number 26. Or proposed number 26.
All right. Don't be afraid of experimenting.
Right. This goes hand in hand with what we're talking about.
Erlenmeyer flasks and...
Nothing like that. What I'm talking about is it's easy to get into a photographic comfort zone, whether that's what you're shooting with or what you're shooting pictures of. And that's fine. It's fine to specialize if that's what you're really into, but especially if you're not doing photography for a living, meaning you can have a little more freedom, don't be afraid to take risks. Don't be afraid to experiment with new equipment, with new subject matter, with new environments, because we have access to this incredible pool of Leica gear that can do so much. And to just use one lens for everything, or always use your 50, always use your 90, you're missing out. I just took a trip to the West Coast and I knew I was going to do a lot of car photography, which if you know me, normally that's like 90-280 or 180 or the longest lens I can get my hands on. And I purposely just brought a 35 and a 50 to just get my brain thinking a little bit differently. And I shot a lot of car stuff with the 35 Apo because I knew it's so easy for me to grab the thing that I know the best. And I actually had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I just started to see things a little bit differently. I started to get more stuff in my scene than I normally do. And it got me thinking in a different way. And it was fun. My success rate, definitely not as high because I'm starting something new. And I was
not the first time.
Exactly. I was more than willing to accept that because I wanted to push myself creatively. And it was super fun. I had a blast. So I would say a lens like this little guy, the Sumeron. One of the most misunderstood lenses in the portfolio, at least of current lenses, this on an SL2 is like such a funky, wacky combination you would never think to use. And I've seen people do that and it looks amazing. Plus it makes the camera super small. So whether it's equipment you already own, equipment you can borrow or buy or try or whatever, maybe something old married to something new, which is what we'll be talking about in Colorado Springs, which we'll probably mention again along with Dublin. Give it a shot. Digital makes it easy. If you're shooting film, that's a little more expensive, but it's free. It's free to shoot and to experiment and to mess up with digital because you can shoot as much as you want. Mm-hmm. We should quickly remind people, now that we're kind of at the top of the show, the high point, about what's coming in May.
Okay.
Which I'll do, and then if you have a second. So if you haven't caught the beginning of the show, quick recap. David, myself, Jose, and our colleague Kirsten, we are traveling to the International Leica Society spring shoot in Colorado Springs, and we'll be doing a live, in-person Red Dot Forum camera talk. It will not be streamed. It will not be recorded. The only way to experience it is to be there in person. If you're not a member of the LHSA, it is an incredible organization that we've all been part of for quite some time. If you are a member and you haven't signed up yet, you can do it at lhsa.org. You can see our chat is there. There's going to be an open bar. We're all going to get wasted. It's going to be great. If you are already going to be there, we look forward to meeting you. It is going to be a blast. And I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that. The annual meeting.
Yeah, and they can find this at lhsa.org.
The annual meeting is in November?
Yeah, let me
or pull October in Dublin, Ireland, right?
Yep.
Dublin is an island.
So that's the...
It's not on their website.
It's not on their website yet. Okay, so...
Really? Come on, LHSA, step it up.
Come on, LHSA.
It's going to be awesome. Well, we'll remind you when it gets gets posted, but yeah, carry on.
But we are going to be doing... Come back to us.
Yeah.
Yes, so LHSA annual meeting in the fall will be in Dublin, Ireland.
David will be there.
I will be there with Kirsten, and we will be either, I can't remember if we're going to or coming from, but it's directly adjacent to our
Scotland,
our Scottish Highlands and Isle of Skye photo adventure. So do we even have spots for that, or is that even listed?
I probably sold out. Anyway, so
I'll look for that.
I don't want. We talked about it at the beginning of the show. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but if you didn't catch that, Friday, May 13th, 8 p.m., in person only.
Yes,
you should be there. We want to see you and hang out with you and have drinks with you. So that's it. That's all I got. Jose, bring me back to the topic of the show, please.
All right. Don't use a UV IR filter on a not M8.
Oh, David, not
M8.
Please tell us all about that.
This. I feel like we've shown this before as well.
But we'll talk about it again.
Let's get a close up here. There we go. Maybe. Trying to see where it says here. So you'll see it says UVIR, like a UVIR. And if you kind of shine it, you'll see it's kind of blue and then it's kind of red. So it has kind of an odd blue/red or greenish blue/red aesthetic here. Head on, it actually will trick you because it looks clear. But once you turn it off axis, you'll start to see that color shift come in right there. And this, for a little history, on the M8, the M8.2, these cameras required this filter to correct for a increased sensitivity, an unexpectedly sensitive portion to infrared and near infrared light. So Leica created these filters, gave 2 free with every purchase of an M8 in whatever size you wanted. And then after that, they made them available for purchase for whatever lenses. A lot of people still have these, and at first glance, again, they just look like clear filters, and they say Leica on them. How bad could they be? The problem is you're filtering out that near infrared light, which also known as red. So you can start getting kind of muddy stuff, cyan results in your shadows and other things where you do not want to use this on any camera except an M8 or an M8.2.
Well
Image
said.
quality, whatever. I'd recommend removing them. If you just have extra ones, maybe knock the glass out and use it as a spacer ring. I'm being serious.
Or donate them.
Or donate them or whatever. But they make for like really low profile lens shades. Really nice.
All right, what's next, Jose?
Okay. Don't go out without an extra battery, and don't go out without an extra SD card. So,
Sure. So
Don't do it.
I have a lot to. I would normally have a lot to say, but we'll keep it short. So, batteries don't last forever. So you may have bought an SL601 brand new in 2015 and found that the battery lasts 500 pictures the first year. Maybe the next year it's 400 pictures, and by year 5 or year 7, it may last 100 pictures. But if you don't use the camera that much, maybe it's your landscape camera or whatever, you may forget about that, and you fully charge it, and you get out and you go, and you realize after an hour your battery's dead. For me, pretty much any camera that I'm bringing, I'm always going to have at least one spare battery, or at least if I'm only going to go out with one, I try to make sure it's a pretty new battery. I do tend to label them with the dates I put them into service once I take out a new one, because you just never know when a battery's shelf life is kind of near its end.
I mean, there's even more to that. I think we've all been there where you may just be casually going somewhere to take pictures. Oh, I'm just walking around and whatever. And then like something amazing happens. Like you just see this incredible sunset, or you see Elvis or Bigfoot or Bigfoot
both.
carrying Elvis.
Yes,
And like, you
that
can't,
happened.
whatever, that happens sometimes. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And you just start taking pictures and you're taking pictures and you're taking battery. Like you see that little red
gut punch.
battery flashing. You're like, but this, the light and Elvis and Bigfoot and so you're like, now what do I have to give up? I don't have time. I can't go back to my hotel or go home to get the battery. Have the battery. Make sure you have an extra, because you never know. And Josh's point, yes, there's a finite life to lithium ion batteries. They have like a useful life curve, and they might show full charge, but they may not last very long. Alternately, you might be having the time of your life shooting like more pictures than you ever thought possible in a given afternoon. And it's just nice to have that extra insurance, to have those batteries.
Yeah.
I mean, I will give you a specific example. On one of our trips in August, which is in Iceland, which is not known for Northern Lights activity because it's summer. Northern Lights is usually fall and winter. And we went out like, hey, why not? Let's try for Northern Lights. And we shot Northern Lights for 3 hours in 30-degree weather, which also kills batteries faster than expected. And these are all long exposures. So we're shooting everything like 5 to 10 second exposures, which also kills your battery faster. And nobody wants to stop shooting. Everyone was going bananas because we're out there seeing this just extraordinary scene and just click, 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 like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pictures. And there was a fair amount of battery changes because these batteries are dying at a much faster rate because of the cold and because of the long exposures. And you just want to be prepared because none of us had experienced anything like that and certainly didn't even expect it. We had hoped there'd be something.
Right.
We just didn't expect 3 solid hours of the most amazing pictures.
Right,
and you never know.
You would say bring batteries for what you hope's going to happen, not what you expect is going to happen. That's the
I like
motto.
that. I like
That's the
that.
motto of this. And the thing about memory cards, is all it takes is a corrupt memory card or a damaged memory card or a full memory card, and you're done.
Right.
So even if I'm only going out for a little bit, I always have a spare SD card either in my pocket or in the bag. Simple as that. There's a lot of stuff in the chat we missed. Oh, why didn't I say?
Elvis is everywhere.
Oh, Elvis, yes. What, did we miss anything in the chat that we still have more to go, but like anything significant?
Okay.
We're good. All right, Jose, carry on. We have
I feel like we're getting it done.
We have a lot. Oh, so many more to go. Well, that's our own fault for making up. We can go to number 20, Jose.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Don't forget to back up your photos.
What's David think?
Don't. I kind of covered it with the memory cards, but the same, Josh kind of hinted at that. All it takes is a corrupted memory card to ruin your trip. The memory cards are getting bigger, 64, 128, 256 gigabytes. That's a lot of pictures. And you're putting thousands of precious little eggs in one tiny little memory card basket.
Fitting for the Easter weekend, you know.
Fitting for the Easter weekend.
That's right.
See what I did there, huh?
I like it. It's a good job.
So there's a couple ways to, when I say backup, a couple different strategies. One, if you have an SL2 or an SL2S or an M11, you can use 2 memory cards and you can simultaneously record to...
Well, M11 is internal storage.
It's internal storage, right. But
don't want to lump it in there.
But SL2, SL2S have dual SD card slots. The M11 has 64 gigabytes of internal memory that you can, especially with the new firmware, if you update your firmware, you can mirror to both locations. And that's one way of backup, right? You can prevent or mitigate a card failure by storing the images to 2 separate places at the same time. That's one way to go. Another thing where we talk about backup is what I like to do is just stay on top of your pictures so that, similar to what we do in the IT world, is how much are you willing to lose? Let's say you're willing to lose one day at a time or an afternoon or whatever it is. As soon as I get back to my hotel room before dinner, I come in from a shoot, I'm gonna take my memory card, pop it in the computer. I've got a little preset for whatever trip I'm on with the keywords and all that. And I just import, get ready for dinner, go, come back, and they're done. And then when I put the memory card back in the camera, I know that they've been backed up to my computer. And they're not just in the card. They're also in the card because I haven't erased them. But having it in more than one place is that added insurance against, because cards can just fail for no reason whatsoever. We have seen it. It's happened to me. Actually, we were together in Monument Valley. Well, I had a card failure.
And I'm going to bring up 33 to you, which is related to this about memory cards,
yes.
Which is do not delete images in your camera.
Don't do that either. A lot of people wonder why I don't delete images. Josh doesn't delete images. And I mean, there's like garbage images on my card. I still don't delete. There's a couple reasons for that. One, the playback delete image interface on modern Leica cameras isn't the world's most intuitive.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that's a little bit of an understatement.
Yeah.
And I never know. I'm like, am I deleting this one or the next one or the one previous?
Or all of them?
Or all of them?
Yeah.
I just don't touch it. And I know that I'm not deleting things that I don't want to delete, because you could double tap something and delete the best picture, which is next to a garbage picture. It's not worth it.
No.
For a few megabytes, it's not worth it. Okay. And then the other thing is, again, you could risk card corruption by deleting data and something happens,
you're
magic
fragmenting
voodoo.
it, and it's not good.
The odds are nothing bad will happen, but something could happen bad.
Right. There's no upside to it.
I think the chance of corruption is pretty minuscule. I think the chance of human operator error is very high. Plus, and I count myself in that category.
The reality is, you're not really going to know if an image is, obviously, if you leave the lens cap on, fine. But you're not really going to know if an image is good or not until
and there's that too.
Until you look at it in a computer.
Right.
I've often found that an image that maybe in and of itself isn't very good might have a little bit of data I could use to clone over another image, or HDR blend a certain section, or I can use some of the material in that image, or I can simply reference it for something. So I just, as a rule, Not almost never, but flat out never deleting
And
cameras.
also Loch Ness Monster or Bigfoot, like really small in the corner.
Or Elvis with Bigfoot.
walking
See,
through.
we're bringing it right back. So,
Yeah,
okay. Jose, let's power through 21 and 22 quickly so David can spend some time on 23 and 24.
Okay. Don't put your fingers on the viewfinder windows.
Yeah, so that's a very simple one.
Go for it.
With rangefinders, you just want to avoid fingerprints on here. You don't want to lick it. You just want to keep these windows 1, 2, 3 as clean as you possibly can, because it just makes it a lot easier to focus precisely. I know that sounds silly, but I can't tell you how many rangefinder cameras I take on trade-in that have who knows what smeared all over the windows on the front. So
nose grease.
I mean, you're just, giving your, I don't know what's happening. But every now and then, just take your lens cloth.
Here's one.
Thank you. And just give the rangefinder window here and the rangefinder window here.
Can I just reiterate? Don't use your shirt to do this.
Please do not use your shirt to do this, for the love of Leica. So, very simple. Keep your rangefinder windows clean, and you will find your images are more likely to be in focus. What's the next one?
Okay. Don't buy an M9 with an old CCD sensor.
I wrote this one, but there's actually there's an exception to this, but we've covered this a million times. The short version is the CCD sensor in the Leica M9 in cameras based like the M9 monochrome and the ME and the M9P will exhibit sensor corrosion. Leica cannot replace the sensors anymore, which means if you buy an M9 with an original sensor, even if it has no corrosion or has very little, it will get worse over time and it cannot be fixed. So maybe if somebody gives you one and the corrosion is very mild and you can clone it out, fine. But I'm not going to go spending my money on one. The exception is, at least here in the US, Leica Customer Care does have a pretty generous program to trade in an M9 with corrosion towards an M10R or an M10 monochrome, and you get a lot of value for it. So in theory, if you could buy a corroded M9 for a lot less than that trade-up value is, you would come out ahead. If you're gonna buy a new M10 monochrome anyway, you could do that. It's a little more work, but that would be the one exception to that rule. But in general, if you're going to buy an M9 or a CCD-based M, not the M8s, just the M9s and M9 monochrome, make sure it has a new sensor and make sure you have the documentation that shows the sensor was replaced. That's it. Short and sweet.
What about S2s, S006s?
Same thing. S2, yeah, that's true. But those are just so rare now that it's like, I stick with the M.
I just want to put that out there. Be complete. All right.
All right, Jose. Now David's going to dive deep a little bit into number 23.
Okay. Don't expose to the right.
Don't expose to the right. Now, he didn't say don't meander to the right. Don't expose to the right. Why shouldn't we expose to the right?
Okay.
What does that mean, David?
That's a little confusing if you don't know what that term means. So let me pull up a histogram, and maybe that would be a good way to start. That is a picture of me. That is also a picture of me. Okay.
Actually, like, dangerous comment. Don't ask Josh about M11 monochrome or M12. That's true. Well, as we've said a million times, we have no idea what's coming. So
okay,
you can ask. We just won't know the answer. What do you got for us there?
So I'm just trying to find a slightly overexposed picture, which I'm not very good at because I don't overexpose.
Ooh, you can take one right now, right?
Ooh, yeah, I could. Okay, I'm gonna take one of Josh, and I'm gonna horrifically overexpose it.
All right, good.
I mean, I should probably focus first.
Well, it doesn't matter.
I mean, it'll be a horribly focused. Okay.
Are you good? You had to take like 5? Okay, there you go. Award-winning photograph. It's not playing back.
There we go. Play back.
Okay. Nope.
Now it is.
There you go.
All right, Jose, can you see that?
Yes, we can.
No, they can't.
We can't see it. I can see it. That's all that matters. Okay.
Okay. So, you see, first of all, this falls into the next one, which is I'm gonna work backwards from there. All this strange black things over the black flashing zones here. This is your highlight warning. This means that I have now blown my highlights. And some of those highlights are in Josh's face, as you can see here. Now, I want you to pay attention to the histogram, and you notice that the histogram distribution is a lot to the right, as we would say. So there's not a lot of information to the left, even though it's not all the way over. This is only slightly over. Whoop. That is not what I wanted to do. Sorry. Okay. And if we zoom in, you can kind of see that it's a little more nuanced here. His whole face isn't blown out, just most of it. But let's go to an area like here that's only minorly blown out. Now you'll see on the histogram, most of the information on the histogram is all stacked to the right. So this is what we call exposing to the right. And the theory being that if you expose to the right, you'll have more information than if you have all your stuff stuck in the shadows. Now, come back to me real quick. Okay. That is a bit of a misnomer, and I think that was carried over from the very early days of digital, where the shadows on CCD sensors were just horribly noisy. I mean, like, horribly noisy. You would pull them up one stop, and they would fall to pieces, big, ugly blocks and green and red pixels all over the place. That's not the case today. Most of your dynamic range, most of your extra information is actually sitting in the shadows, not in the highlights. You have, on modern Leica cameras, maybe half a stop to a stop of recovery. I could probably pull that shot back of Josh's, the side of his face, but not the front, where he was illuminated by the light. The only notable exception I would make on this table is the M11, which has additional information in the highlights, more than any other camera that Leica's made. It has a significant amount of highlight recovery. That doesn't mean that you should continually blow your highlights. What I see people do is, you know, try to balance a scene out, especially a really high contrast scene, let's say sunrise, sunset, and, you know, half the sky is flashing black like that. I'm like, no, no, no. Protect your highlights. Do not overexpose. Dial back your exposure until there is no flashing highlights, which is why I love now in the M11 has joined the SL2 and SL2S highlight weighted metering. This is basically doing that for you and making sure that you don't blow your highlights out, and which takes us to the next item on the list, which is, Jose?
Don't blow your highlights.
No, that one after that.
Don't judge out of camera results.
Ah. Ooh, controversial topic here.
Don't judge your results out of camera. If I actually rolled through some of these images from our last workshop on here, you would see that they often, a lot of my pictures look pretty dark. I mean, I don't go around showing them like, look at this amazing picture that I shot.
Yeah.
It's like, because they look like garbage.
Yeah.
I shoot specifically with the intent for post-production. That is probably very controversial. I'm gonna say it again, I shoot with the intent to post-process my images. And when someone says, oh, well, either what did that look like out of camera, or, well, how much work did you do on that? And my response is, well, what do you think of the final result? And they say, oh, it looks great, it's amazing. I said, what does it matter what it looked like out of camera? Because I don't get bonus points for trying to mash everything together in camera to get almost a good result. I would rather underexpose or use exposure bracketing to create what I actually see or recreate what I see and realize my vision as a photographer, because it's the entire process. It's not just, you know, some challenge of getting it right in camera. Like, this isn't a sport in terms of, like, you know, where you get difficulty points, like in high diving or something. All that matters, at least to me, is the end result. The end result of hanging on the wall or on the internet or whatever, and knowing, because that's not cheating. That's taking full advantage of the capabilities of the camera and the lens and what I can, all the information and data that I can capture. Because the more information I can capture cleanly as possible means I have more creative freedom in post-processing to get what I want. So those three things sort of work together. Don't blow your highlights because you're not going to be able to post-process. Don't expose to the right. Again, you're not going to be able to post-process. And don't judge your results out of camera because that's not what really matters. What really matters is the final result.
I think it would say, to rephrase the last one, it's not necessarily, I mean, yes, that's obviously correct. Another way to say it would be, don't view your out-of-camera image as the finished product.
Sure.
Because it's not. The workflow of post-production is part of that imaging pipeline, going from conceptualizing a picture in your head to having a finished picture. It's not an add-on. It's not an extra. It is a critical part of that
Yes.
process of all those steps. Somebody said, Leica camera Australia, Leica Academy Australia recommends exposed to the right. Well, that's because they're in the southern hemisphere, so it's different.
The Coriolis effect.
Yeah, the Coriolis effect
yeah.
for the histogram, like with the toilets that go the other way. So I understand. But that's great advice and controversial for sure. But if you go out with either of us, and whatever we're shooting, pretty much, and you just were to like peek over our shoulder and look at our playback, you'd be like, "Whoa, what?
What gives?
What? There's no picture there."
Well, think about it. I'm shooting these high contrast, range, very dynamic, very immersive landscape images. Josh is shooting cars, which are all reflective surfaces and deep colors and chrome in crazy light. Like none of those things are easy to photograph.
Yeah.
Whether you're trying to shoot into the sun or you're shooting like a chrome bumper with polished paint, like these are not easy things. And there's tools that we can use. You can use a polarizer. We can bracket exposure, but not using the tools that we have available to us, either traditional tools like filters or modern digital tools like what we have in Lightroom or HDR, seems like kind of a waste. Why wouldn't we use what we have available?
Agreed.
I'll give one last little analogy here. It's sort of like going into a restaurant, into a fine dining restaurant. You're going to a Michelin star restaurant. You don't ask the chef. It's like, well, what did those ingredients look like, out of the grocery store? Like, you don't care about that. What you care about is this beautiful creation on the plate and what it tastes like and what it looks like, because the chef isn't plating up a carrot and flour and eggs and like a whole chicken. Like, there is things that happen to take the raw ingredients and combine them in an artful way to create this final product.
Well said.
And I will leave it at that. Jose, what do we got?
What do we got next?
All right. Don't ignore your custom function buttons.
This is a huge one. So
You deal with that.
SL601, SL2, CL, Q2, M11, all of these cameras have function buttons, meaning there are buttons whose function is assignable by the user depending on what you're doing. So many times I see people not even bothering to use or set their function buttons, and they're diving into the menu every single time they have to change something. When the reality is, for example, on the M11, we now have three customizable function buttons to do whatever we want. And those function buttons can be different for each user profile. So if you have 4 user profiles, that's what, 12 different?
That's 16.
16 different?
Math, yeah.
I don't know. More than one, less than a million. Lots of different combinations. And I'll literally go out and have, like say, talking about cars again, a car show, and have different user profiles, and I'll have one user profile where I have a function button set up for drive mode, and if that's if cars are moving, and one where it's between focus mode. I mean, I am going crazy. If you're not utilizing your function buttons to get the most quickly accessed features right at your fingertips, you're just not getting your money's worth. What I tend to do when I bring a new camera into use is either physically write down or write on my phone or mentally note that what functions I'm diving into the menu for most frequently, and that's what I'll assign my function buttons to. Because I don't always know exactly what I'm going to use on a new camera the most, so I'm just practicing that and getting a feel for, maybe I am doing a lot of image stabilization, turning on and off, and I'll put that on a button or whatever. So get your money's worth out of your cameras. If you've got at least one customizable function button, set it and use it.
I love custom functions.
Me too. I think I've said it pretty well.
Yeah.
Next.
Why not, right?
Right. Don't neglect cleaning up your menu options.
You wrote that one, so why don't you tell us about it?
Right. So personally, I use the SL2. I don't really use favorites. For me, I'll go from I will use this. Turn the camera back on. It's super overexposed. I will use this, which is the, just the quick menu, but I don't. Okay, you'll notice, maybe you didn't notice, because let me do that again. So I'm going from here, and I'm going this menu, which is the kind of the quick setting menu, and then I'm hitting menu again, and you notice it says here, main menu, not favorites, because I've disabled the favorites on my camera. That would be that little icon that's actually grayed out. A lot of people, just as the camera comes by default, when you push menu after the main quick menu, it brings you to a favorite screen. You push menu again, it takes you to the main menu. I just don't use the favorites because there is 6 assignable custom function buttons on an SL2. There's really very few things that I can't access either with a direct custom function button, just by pushing and turning a wheel, or by going into that quick settings menu and touching it. Anything else, I generally don't want to change very quickly because I don't want to accidentally modify that. I don't want to, you know, quick format my memory card because I don't ever want to format my memory card of a memory card that's in my camera with pictures on it. I don't ever change white balance, you know, things like that. So I just cleaned it up, and you can go in and you can disable all of the
favorites.
So then
turn them off.
You just turn them off, and then it skips over that menu entirely, and you don't have that extra button press when you're going in. Likewise, on your custom functions on here, you can actually disable and enable only options that you want to see in your custom functions assignment menu, and disable the rest that you're never going to use.
Now, this don't is a little bit more fluid because I know some people watching this probably do like the favorites menu, which is fine.
It's fine. I'm just talking about cleaning up.
But this is more for us, just an awareness of that. Number one, you can disable it if you want. We both do. But also not to be at the mercy of whatever's from the factory, to go in and actually clean it up and make it the way you want. Yeah.
Get rid of options you don't want.
Exactly.
Add in ones you do. And you just have a more fluid shooting experience where you're not digging through
Pull up
things.
the list again. Let me see what's left here because we're almost out of time.
Yeah. No, that's the last one.
Yeah, no, 32 is last, Jose. We'll do 35.
Yeah, this is good.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't store cameras and lenses in your basement, attic, or garage.
I mean,
that should go without saying,
but people do. And, you know, especially, I know, Josh, you've had people come to you with some vintage gear and be like, here, I found this in my XYZ relative's basement and it's been there for the last 50 years.
Yeah.
What is it worth?
Literally nothing.
You're like, oh, well, let me open the leather case. Oh, it disintegrated into a pile of dust. Oh, and there's all this fungus and haze in the lens, and it doesn't turn. Okay. Cameras, over the long period of time, do not like high moisture. They don't like high temperature or overly cold temperature. You know, we got to keep them nice and secure, right?
Climate control.
Yeah, and I have heard, you know, and certainly people have asked earlier. We've actually gotten a few questions about this.
Yeah.
Oh, should I use a dehumidifier cabinet? Should I use? As long as you're comfortable in your air-conditioned abode, the camera's comfortable too.
Well, Julie's the exception because she's comfortable in like 97 degrees, 90% humidity.
Yeah.
So if you're, as long as you have warm blood, and you're comfortable, yes. The reality is, if you're using the gear even somewhat frequently, it's a moot point.
Yeah.
If you're storing it for that long and it's not something collectible, you probably should just get rid of it, right? Seriously. If you're talking about collectible storage, and if it's vintage, maybe it's not sealed as well.
Sure, you could keep it in a dry cabinet with desk
especially if it already may be starting to develop a little bit of haze or fungus. Yeah. That's the exception to the rule in terms of like storing in a dry cabinet, just to keep it from getting worse.
Right.
But anything you see on this table, like SL2s and M10s and M11s, we all just keep them on a shelf in our.
Came out of shelves.
Yeah. They're just inside with air conditioning, and that works out just fine.
Yeah, it's totally fine. Now there might be a situation where I go out and I shoot in a very wet place, like Iceland, and all my cameras were just like completely wet. My camera bag's wet. Everything's just damp and wet. Yes, I will leave things out for a few days just to dry out completely in a dry environment by a heater, just to make sure that they are fully dried out before I put them away, because I don't want moisture accumulating inside things and causing damage over the long run. Likewise, if I'm shooting at the beach, even if you're not getting like shooting in the waves, as the waves are breaking and the wind is blowing, you're getting salt residue on things. So I do make sure to rinse off with fresh water before putting away. These are just, you don't want salt accumulating, you don't want moisture inside, and you don't want, you know, stuff going super hot where the seals start, you know, degrading or the lubricants start breaking down. Likewise, you don't want it too cold below freezing, because then the seals again will start cracking and breaking down. So just as long as you're comfortable, the camera's going to be comfortable.
Well said. What's next?
Okay. Don't use alcohol on painted cameras or leather.
Yeah, just as a general rule, you don't want to use any kind of rubbing alcohol on painted cameras, leather body coverings. I generally just don't use it at all on any Leica stuff. I'll use like the iLead lens cleaner, camera cleaner, which is like a non-alcohol based cleaning solution. Better safe than sorry. You can even just use a very, very lightly damp lens cloth if you need to dissolve something on there. But I try to avoid alcohol. It's pretty harsh. On the anodized stuff, it's okay. I never put it directly on the thing. I only put it on like a lens cloth or a lint-free lens tissue and then try to clean whatever I'm trying to clean. The biggest challenge comes when anyone watching this, puts tape on their cameras because you think you're cool. I don't really know. It's not a hockey stick, okay? And then you trade it into me, and I gotta peel the tape off like some kind of surgeon, and then there's all sorts of sticky nonsense, and I'm there with a Q-tip, and I'm out rubbing alcohol for 20 minutes in my office with a book light, trying desperately to get that sticky residue off. Other than that, you're fine.
Don't throw the boxes away.
and don't throw your boxes
don't throw the box away. And then rubbing alcohol on leather can dry it out and crack it.
Yes.
But you could do a quick clean and then recondition the leather.
Right. You just got to be careful. You just got to be careful. That's it. That's my dog, like running in his
No,
dream?
that's me.
Oh,
That's me. I'm sorry. I'm just tapping my foot.
little runs in his dreams. What do we got?
Okay, this is for me.
All right, I'm gonna pose this one to you. I don't know why you put it on here. Because it's 37.
Because it
triggers you. Fine.
It does. It does.
This is the David one.
It's a David.
Don't edit on a laptop or an iPad with auto brightness or night shift turned on.
Please don't. Please don't. For me. Just for me.
That's just about consistency of view.
Consistency, right. Yeah. So, and I say this because I travel with a lot of people who are taking pictures on trips with laptops and iPads, and I'm like, why is your laptop screen disgustingly yellow? What? It's like, can I see the settings, please? Night shift. Apple believes that everybody should have horrible looking screens at night. I don't know why. Maybe it's, I don't know, some blue light thing, but here's the thing. When you're editing photos, consistency is key. A lot of people ask if I adjust my brightness based on if I'm in a brighter room or in a darker room. No, I never touch the brightness setting on my laptop. I also make sure that it doesn't dim when I unplug it, because a lot of laptops will also automatically dim the screen for power saving when you're on battery versus when you're plugged in. I disable that. I disable auto brightness based on ambient light sensor, and I disable any kind of night shift technology that turns your screen warmer when it's darker out. All of those things can just completely mess you up, because I have been there myself, and I have worked with people where you're going through and you're doing an amazing edit at night in your room after a shoot, and then you, in the light of day, literally and figuratively, you look at all these images and you're like, these look atrociously bad. Was I just like, was I out of my mind last night? Were my eyes broken? And then you check your settings and you realize that you were editing everything under, very dim, very yellow screen conditions. And now under normal lighting, everything is like bright blue. And now you have to go back and re-edit everything. So just maintain consistency. Don't let Apple rule your display life, and you're good to go.
I think we should 38. We can skip. We have one left. Before we do that, I just quickly want to shout out everybody out on the West Coast that I got to see last week. Thank the LHSA and the Lights Auction and the Leica Store in Los Angeles and Leica Camera USA for hosting an awesome event, and everybody who took time to come up and say hello. That was super cool. You know who you are. So thank you, everybody. It was nice to be there for a few days. So quick shout out to all the West Coast folks. But anyway.
Did you want to actually say don't use tape on your Leicas?
Don't use tape on your Leicas.
Specifically electrical tape. Don't use electrical tape.
Don't use any tape on your Leicas, please. I'm begging you. Okay.
Okay.
But anyway.
That's a don't.
I'm gonna have Jose pose this last one, and we're each gonna say what we think, what comes to mind.
Sure.
When we hear it. You will go first. Unless you want me to go first.
You go first this time.
Oh, you want me to go first?
I do. I do.
Go.
Don't stop shooting.
Don't stop shooting. When I hear that, well, I wrote that. When I hear that, what it tells me is the joy of photography is making pictures. So when you stop doing that, when you decide, oh, I got that one, it's good, I'll go to the next scene. Or, you know, I'm not gonna take the camera out. You're missing out. Like I just said earlier, it's free to shoot a digital camera. It's free to take, it's the same cost to take 1 picture or 10 pictures. So for me, I don't just take 1 picture and call it a day. I'll take 10, I'll take 15, I'll take 20. I'll mix it up. If I wake up on a shooting day and I don't feel like shooting, doesn't matter. I'm gonna get out there and shoot. I'm gonna work the light. I'm gonna work the scene. Don't stop shooting, because in the end, it's all about the pictures. It's all, in my opinion, well, to me, it's all about have as much gear as possible. But for most of us, it's all about the pictures. And the pictures come from shooting. So when you don't stop shooting, when you shoot and you work the scene and you take risks and you experiment and you try new things, you're gonna end up with more pictures that you're happy with. It's gonna motivate you to get out and continue that trend for years.
I like it. So don't stop shooting. The light is always changing. The scene is always changing. And that's just, you know, certainly when we do our trips, there's 2 competing things that you constantly are fighting against. One is, you know, you're not working a scene, which is, okay, I'm in this position and I'm waiting for the shot. And you're taking a million pictures of this one thing at this one focal length, at this one setting, waiting for that very moment of that one postcard shot. Okay, but why are you stopping exploring other options? Get your shot and move, you know, get unstuck. That's what we call it. You know, like it's getting unstuck, or we say, you know, stick and move, like, you know, Muhammad Ali, right? Get your shot, move on, get another shot, move on, get another shot. Because personally, I would rather come away from a scene, not with 1 good shot, but with 10 good shots of different things. If you're shooting something wide, try a telephoto. Isolate details. Don't stop because you got this 1 wide shot. Change lenses. Shoot a long shot. You know, get down on your stomach and shoot something from low down if you were shooting at eye level. Experiment. Just play around and do different things, because like Josh is saying, it doesn't cost you anything. You're there already. You're in this amazing place. Take advantage of it by exploring and trying different things. Don't be satisfied just because you got something really good, because you can come away with so much more than that. And then the other thing is, don't just constantly move and not work a particular scene. If you see something, it's like, wow, this is something really good, don't leave. Like, continue to work it, finesse it, finite, you know, kind of focus and hone in on that and figure out, okay, let me make some small adjustments to get that just right before I move on. Because then you're getting, and that's why I say it's a balance. It's, don't get so unstuck that you're just constantly moving around and never really seeing one thing, but also don't get so fixated on one thing. Explore, try different angles, try different perspectives. If you're gonna shoot, like I would say, you're shooting a waterfall, great. Shoot at fast shutter speed and freeze it. Then shoot a slow shutter speed and blur it. Get both. You know, try different things, because that moment is only gonna happen once and you're only there that time.
I wanna know what Jose has to say when he hears don't stop shooting.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of both of what you guys were saying, but it's, I think the statement, you don't know what you don't know, really applies to photography. It's like, you don't know what photo you're gonna, you know, you don't know what moment is gonna happen right in front of you. You don't know, you know, where you're gonna miss. So I think experimenting, yeah, it's very important. And sometimes, you know, do the opposite of what's normal in that scene. So I know David does this a lot. If he's shooting landscapes, he's not just shooting wide angle, you know, 60 millimeter, 21, 24. He's shooting telephoto, you know, you're changing it up. And that just comes from practice, from experimenting, from, you know, walking around, doing street photography with a 75 instead of a 35 all the time. Yeah. You know, like, you don't know what's going to happen. So yeah, it's literally just experiment. You don't know what you're going to see, you know, what's going to happen. And that's the beauty of digital photography. It's like what we said earlier, you know, you have 128 gigabytes on a car. You can shoot all day. You can, you know, have different batteries. And the apertures, of course, you know, change your shutter speed.
Wait, it's all coming together?
It's all coming together. Look at that.
Look at Jose. He's wrapping all those things up.
Good job. Well
Yeah,
said.
just keep shooting.
Keep shooting.
And
Look,
on that
it's fun.
note,
It's fun. Like, why would you
Don't
stop?
get too lost in the specs and the numbers and the, like, just shoot. Just see what
just
happens.
shoot. Just fire the shutter.
Just shoot.
Because like Josh says, it's better to have a grainy photo sharp than
I'll always think a grainy picture over a blurry picture.
You had to say it again,
10
didn't
times
you?
out of 10.
You had to say it again.
Why don't you sign us off, David? I think we've done it.
Oof.
I've
Okay.
been watching the chat. We're good.
You've been watching the chat.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, just another reminder again, check out LHSA.org if you want to see us live. Remember, this is not going to be recorded. It's not going to be put on YouTube. So it's in person, exclusive only, unless somebody like streams it on the internet.
No, we're confiscating everyone's electronic devices.
Okay, it's like a Bob Dylan
Yeah,
concert
there's also going to be a Faraday cage around the conference room. No.
with cell phone blockers.
That's right. If you don't show up, you will never know. We're going to talk about what's coming next.
Oh my gosh.
MLM Monaco, CL2. You're going to miss it if you don't go. So that's.
Oh wow.
I'm a terrible person.
Oh, you are horrible. You are hard. It's like twist the knife.
It's so
If you like this video, as always, please give us a thumbs up. Lets us know that we're doing a good job. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, red.forum. Click the notification bell so you know when we post new content, because sometimes we don't even know when we post new content. We just show up and it's like, oh, turn the cameras on, we're here.
all right.
So make sure to subscribe. We're inching ever closer to our 20,000 subscriber mark. We want your help to do it because we can't click that button more than once, so we need you. Check out red.forum.com for the latest Leica news, reviews, tech articles, firmware updates, etc. Always make sure to refresh the page and stay on top of that. You can also find red.forum on Apple News and I think on Google News too now. So yeah, we're there. Big thanks, as always, to Josh for keeping it geeky. Big thanks to Jose for actually keeping us organized and on track.
Yes.
And in focus, as
And
always.
Kirsten, if she's around.
I don't know if Kirsten's around, but if Kirsten's around, big thanks to Kirsten. We're looking forward to seeing her shortly. And shout out to my people that I will see in Patagonia in a few days, because super excited to get down there and get to work with you guys. That's going to be a lot of fun. If you want to check out any of our destination trips, you can do so at Leica Store Miami under the events and destination stuff. Although most everything's full, but we did just list Japan for November, and I think we have a few spots left on that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're pretty filled up. But yeah, thanks for watching. We will be back
Sometime.
sometime.
I think in 2 weeks, right?
No,
Hold on.
I'm still in South America.
Let's see. Not on the 23rd, not on the
Just checking.
29th. That's May. Oh, I got way ahead. Let's see. Hold on.
Super cool.
I should know.
You should know.
Since I'm in the show.
Yeah.
Looking at my calendar here.
Makes for great YouTube.
May 7th?
May 7th.
Wow, 3 weeks. Well, that's what you get for going up exotic land.
Sorry.
May 7th on YouTube, and then the next Friday in person.
Ooh.
Nice.
All right, we're doing it. So
All right, everybody, we did it.
thanks a lot. Thanks for tuning in and joining us on this Saturday night. For those of you that celebrate, have a happy Easter
And
tomorrow.
happy Passover.
And
as
happy
well.
Passover, which just started. So happy holidays to all, and to all a good night.
All right, good night, everyone.
Good night, guys.